I'm not a guru. I don't sit over here and try and make shit up or just tell people what I think worked for me, because oftentimes people do things in spite of themselves that really have no evidence in terms of outcomes. I'm more of a collator of information. I reach out to professionals in the industry. I've studied exercise science. I got my CSCS. I read the work of the professionals, and usually domain-specific professionals. If it's a nutrition question, I want to talk to PhDs in nutrition or RDNs. If it's a strength question, I want to listen to Brad Schoenfeld's work from, his hypertrophy research. People with PhDs in exercise phys. My co-author of The Vertical Diet is a PhD RDN who was director of dietetics at UNLV and an instructor in the exercise phys department. He's uniquely qualified in both areas that we're interested in, nutrition and training, to make sure that we, put well over 200 peer-reviewed researched articles to support all of our recommendations. Plus, I've been around a long time, and I don't get moved very often by a lot of these claims that are made in popular social media environments. I just think a lot of people spend a lot of time majoring in the minors or over-exaggerating the meaningfulness of some mechanism that they can describe biochemically. I followed Dr. Peter Attia for years, patiently, because I've been at this for 30 years, watching him piss on keto sticks on Instagram for 3 straight years and show us his state of ketosis and intermittent fast. And he was famous for doing 3-day, 5-day, 7-day fasts quarterly or more often. And now, through much trial and error, and after Peter interviewed some of the most academically qualified individuals in those areas, he no longer does intermittent fasting. He no longer does keto. His DEXA scans showed that he lost muscle mass. His energy levels weren't sufficient for hypertrophy training, which is his current focus. It's interesting to see me over here. I'm just some meathead that fell in love with lifting weights. And so it's really rewarding to see someone of Peter Attia's caliber. And there's others who I followed over the years. Peter's obviously one of the more notable people more recently, is a Stanford MD and a Johns Hopkins oncology surgeon who's in the longevity field now. And it's interesting to see that he has fallen upon the fountain of youth, which we all have long since discovered, which is strength. And he's found that when you lift weights, it dramatically improves your lifespan and health span. And so he's focused almost exclusively on strength. And remember, I said strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never a strength. When you begin focusing on strength, I found this when talking to Mike Mutzel, who was a keto intermittent fasting fan for many, many years. I found this when I was on the podcast with Carnivore MD, Paul Saladino, who was a keto intermittent fasting fan for many years. As soon as they became focused on strength, they started understanding the value of eating enough, often enough, with sufficient carbohydrates specifically to fuel that workload, that performance, that bout of lifting in the gym. You cannot, as you know, just go in there and cross T's and dot I's. It's not just I did this many sets and reps. You have to train hard enough. You have to take your body somewhere it's never been before. The stimulus has to be sufficient to trigger a response, and it has to be progressive over time. And if you ever go in and don't outperform, maybe not last week, but certainly last month, if there isn't some sort of progression, you're not continually taking your body somewhere it hasn't been before, you'll stop progressing from that stimulus. And so you have to be sufficiently fueled. We also used to believe, and I think the keto people had argued for a long time, your liver produces carbohydrates and puts them into the bloodstream, and you can drive a car, 100 miles an hour on a half tank of gas as easily as you can on a full tank of gas. Those were always the arguments that have been made over the years. But as it turns out, that we don't store carbohydrates in just one place in the muscle. They're stored in different places in the muscle. When you top off your carbohydrate stores, the last place that's filled is also the first place that's drained during training. And that's in the sarcoplasmic reticulum, where the carbohydrates are first released. They trigger, calcium, which fires the troponin, tropomyosin, muscle contraction, filament, contraction. For those people who study exercise phys, that stimulus is most optimal with more carbohydrates, or a full load of carbohydrates. And once those start to decline during training, then you're not going to have as good of a training performance. So it does matter that you have sufficient carbohydrates to fuel the workout.
I'd love to talk specifics here on training, specifically building muscle and strength training. We talked about earlier on cardio not being near as effective for fat loss or muscle building as training. And I think a lot of people will be like, well, if I'm trying to lose weight, why would I go in and lift heavy? Like, shouldn't I just be constantly having my heart rate elevated? So let's talk to the guys out there, how to set up, once again, they're not going to be a true beginner. So not somebody that's just like their first day stepping into the gym, but they've been bouncing around. They've been, maybe doing some CrossFit. Maybe they've been, doing the express lane at the gym. What does a good strength program look like in terms of days, volume, frequency, exercises? Is it free weights, machines? Is it cables? Is it a variation of all that? I know there's a lot there, but yeah, if we can kind of walk through, just like we did with the nutrition, some of these core fundamental principles that we need.
Well, the ultimate question was, what does a good strength training program look like? But the intro, you said that people oftentimes train differently to lose weight. They focus on the energy expenditure side. And we spoke earlier about the fact that it's the energy intake side that is most relevant to weight loss. Very simply, you lose weight in the kitchen. You don't exercise away weight necessarily. I mentioned it's not terribly effective. It's not terribly efficient. Your body compensates for it. It downregulates the number of calories that you burn, all of those reasons that we don't use the gym to exercise. Getting our heart rate up for an extended period of time is great for health, but it's not the best thing for weight loss. So lose weight in the kitchen, create a calorie deficit, maintain the deficit. Now, unfortunately, in terms for maintaining a calorie deficit for weight loss isn't the best stimulus for muscle gain. When you're in a calorie deficit, it's harder to gain muscle. That would be another reason why you should eat more protein more often, is if you're in a calorie deficit. But even then, even if you're eating more protein more often, if you're in a calorie deficit, it's very hard to build muscle, particularly for the person that you described. The person watching us, the people watching us today are intermediate lifters at the very least. They're no strangers to the gym. They're in there working out. And sometimes they get frustrated because they've been at it for a year or 2 years or 10 years. And they kind of look the same as they did last year or 5 years ago. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, because ultimately lifespan and health span is dependent upon that we continue to do these things. When they measure people's strength, it's less about their current level of strength and more about what they had to do to get there and have had to continue to do to get there. So it's an ongoing process, whether it's 30 minutes, 150 minutes of cardio a week, or it's weightlifting 3 times a week. Those things never end. There's no finish line to this deal. That's one of the challenging things with people who go on programs, is that they never end. That's why it should become a lifestyle. It should be simple, sensible, and sustainable. And it should be something that you can adhere to long-term. Compliance is the science. Okay. So if I'm encouraging someone to gain muscle in the gym, I'm asking them first and foremost to try and get into a small calorie surplus. And that would be dependent upon whether or not they had a significant amount of body fat that they intended to lose first. Maybe I would put them in a neutral calorie rather than a surplus or a deficit, just at a calorie maintenance, and try and do a body recomposition, which can sometimes happen if you have a significant amount of body fat and you're somewhat undertrained. You can gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. The less fat you have to lose and the more experienced you are, the less likely it is you're going to gain muscle in the calorie maintenance. So put you in a slight calorie surplus. And 300 or 500 calorie surplus is just as good as a 1,500 calorie surplus, probably better, because you won't gain as much fat. And so don't think that just because you eat more calories, you're going to gain more muscle, because the limiting factor there is physiologically, you just can't build muscle that fast. I don't care how hard you train and how much you eat. That process is laborious and it takes time. So be patient, be consistent, be persistent. Get into a small calorie surplus, get sufficient protein, about 1 gram a day, get 4 evenly spaced meals a day would be my recommendation. So now the stimulus, if you want to build muscle, and I don't encourage people to go to the gym and just exercise, because this has to be measurable and progressible. There's a difference between training and exercise. Training being measurable and progressible, exercise being battle ropes and burpees and burning calories, or supposedly because you sweat and breathed hard. That's not anything anybody enjoys. Any trainer can tire any trainee out and make them go home exhausted and sweaty and breathing hard. It doesn't mean they got a result. It doesn't mean it was an effective training session. So I don't recommend battle ropes and burpees. I recommend weightlifting. In my book, I actually stole it from Dr. Brett Contreras, PhD glute guy. Of course, I credit him for it. It's called The Evidence-Based Guidelines of Hypertrophy, one of the most thorough charts and easy to read, but it goes down the list. And first and foremost is frequency. Most people should train each body part twice a week. Now, whether you do a full body Monday and a full body Friday, or you do a upper Monday, lower Tuesday, upper Thursday, lower Friday, doesn't matter. Okay, training every body part twice a week, mainly because you want to train your body part and give it about 2 to 3 days to rest and then train it again. If you give it a full week or 10 days, you may stimulate a little bit of growth, but then that might also, in detraining, it might also decline over the course of the time that you've been away from training. So the idea is just to keep tacking on these little bouts of stimulus so you can continue to grow. So about twice a week per body part. The split I really set up based on somebody's personal schedule. If you're a busy individual, you're going to be able to go to the gym less, then I'm going to have you do a full body workout, Monday and Friday. I get people who work a ton of hours during the week. I might have them go in Wednesday night and do a really quick full body workout, or Wednesday morning early, and then have them do their longer, harder sessions on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, when they're well rested, well fed. And some people who want to train even more, I might have them split chest in the morning on Saturday, back at night on Saturday night, quads in the morning on Sunday, and hamstrings at night on Sunday night. And then Wednesday is a full body workout, just to keep the progress going. So that'd be how I would design something for a busy professional. But if you've got all the time in the world and you want to have the best program, I think you should train at least 4, possibly 5 days a week. Break that up into whether it's a push-pull legs or it's an upper-lower. But now we have to talk about what's the most sufficient training to stimulate growth. You can build just as much muscle lifting heavy weights for 5 reps as you can, lifting a medium weight for 12 reps as you can, lifting a lightweight for 20 to 30 reps, so long as they're to within a rep of failure. That's what we call intensity. The heavier weights, obviously, you're going to get stronger because strength is specific. It has a nervous system component, but strength doesn't drive hypertrophy. So you could lift a lighter weight for 12, 15 reps. And the heavier weight, you may incur more fatigue and potentially increase your susceptibility or exposure to injury. And so those are all considerations to have if you want strength as opposed to size. When I train MMA athletes, UFC athletes, I have them do heavier loads. I don't want to build muscle. I don't want to add weight to an athlete that's trying to cut weight. I want to keep them in their weight class, but I want them to be strong. And strength doesn't require hypertrophy. It can help. A larger muscle can become a stronger muscle. And I've gone from, obviously, up through the weight classes all the way to 275 and 308 over the years. And Eddie Cohn started at 165 and ended up at 242. So yes, building muscle, you can obviously gain weight and gain strength over the years. So you have to be within a rep or two of failure. That's what's really important. Now, we used to believe, and this research is still evolving, Brad Schoenfeld's work from 10 years ago is different than it is from last week and last year. We used to believe there were 3 components to building muscle. It was mechanical tension, and that's just putting a weight and moving it through range of motion. Metabolic stress, and that's, if you do a bunch of reps and you get the pump. We believed that those metabolite, all the testosterone and growth hormone and all those other things that would accumulate as a result of doing, Arnold talked about the pump, right? We believed that metabolic stress was a muscle builder, particularly because 20% of muscle is water, or 70% of muscle is water, but 20% of the muscle is sarcoplasm, which is just fluid. So we believed that metabolic stress. And then muscle damage. We thought that, when you damage the muscle, its recovery causes it to get stronger. We now believe that almost 100% of the stimulus comes from the mechanical tension, comes from lifting the weight. The metabolic stress component has recently been challenged. It seems that metabolic stress and muscle damage are passengers, that if you train hard enough to get a sufficient stimulus to grow, and you're within a rep or two of failure, you're probably going to get a pump and you're probably going to do some damage. But those aren't the drivers of the growth. Those are passengers. And so we'll stay focused on mechanical tension. Now we know from the research that that's just lifting weights, mechanical tension. Now we know from the research that the lengthened position contributes to more hypertrophy than the shortened position. So you want to train through a full range of motion and control the weight on the way down. and that's the timing or the pace of the repetition. And that is somewhere between, just under control, 2 to 5 seconds. Doing a 10-second eccentric isn't going to give any more growth than a 2-second eccentric. And so there's no reason to purposely do a long negative. It might create more muscle damage, but again, that's not the driver of growth. Control the weight on the negative, go through a full range of motions where there's still tension at end range. That's pretty important. Say on a bicep curl, if you're standing there and the dumbbell's at your side, there's relatively little tension in the bicep. But if you put it onto a preacher curl bench at the bottom, there is tension, right? Or if you're just on an incline bench leaning back and you're keeping your arms, there's tension. If you take a cable and pull it through your legs so that the stack's behind you, and you do your curl that way, when you're at full extension, there's still tension because the cable's pulling, back through your legs. If that's description is sufficient for people to follow. That's just an example. Same with quadriceps. When you're standing there at the bar on your back when you're squatting, there's no tension. It's not until you bend your knees that you start to create tension. Now you want to go all the way down to get as much knee angle, as much stretch or lengthened position in the quadricep as you can. That's why a full squat would be better than a 90-degree squat for hypertrophy. Now, there's something to be said for 45-degree or 90-degree squats for strength, because strength's specific. And if your athlete is only moving from that knee angle or that overall angle, hip angle and knee angle, you may be able to strengthen that position more by working in that position. And so I want to be careful to distinguish between strength and hypertrophy. Leg press, if you're focused on your hip angle with feet high and outside on the leg press platform, you're not going to have a whole lot of knee angle. You're going to have a kind of a vertical shin. And so you're not going to get as much stretch in the quad. All the stretch will be up in the hip, be more glute. And so where you place your feet in and down and how much knee angle you get will determine how much stretch or lengthened position you get in the quad. And that's a better hypertrophy stimulus than a heavier weight loaded through the hips with the glutes participating in the movement. So even load doesn't matter. What matters is, especially if you're recruiting multiple muscle groups in a multi-joint movement, that's why isolation movements are just as effective for hypertrophy as multi-joint movements on a specific muscle. We use multiple joint movements because they get benefits for multiple muscles. If you don't do that exercise through a significant range of motion and your body responds differently than someone else's, for example, if you're bench pressing, you get 3 bench pressers. One guy might have huge front delts from bench pressing. Another guy might get huge triceps from bench pressing. Another guy might get a huge chest from bench pressing. And some lucky motherfucker probably gets all 3. But I'm not that guy. I got big front delts from bench pressing. I didn't necessarily get big triceps or chest from bench pressing. So when I worked with Flex Wheeler, he took me off of bench pressing because I already had huge front delts, and that's what the bench press did for me. And so he would put me onto dumbbells and make me bring my sternum up and drop my shoulders back and get my elbow really deep and wrap my pec around my rib cage to get a full stretch. And I got more volume in my chest than I'd ever gotten from over 20 years of competing in 6 months of training with Flex. And just because he made me utilize an exercise that more specifically benefited my chest. And so he did the same thing. He wouldn't let me squat. He took me to leg press, feet in and down, huge knee angle. I went from 12 plates on a side to 6 plates on a side. It's humiliating, but eventually that 6 plates on a side, week after week after week, with the feet in and down and the knee bend and the greater range of motion and more stretch, that started going up to 7 plates, 8 plates, 9 plates, 10 plates over time. And my legs grew. And I had the most quad volume that I'd had in over 20 years of competing from training with Flex and isolating and using less weight, the quad muscles. So range of motion is on there. We talked about tempo, 2 to 5 second rep. We talked about frequency, twice a week. We talked about volume. So volume, now you've got folks out there now kind of with the Dorian mindset that you only need a couple sets per workout. Mike Israetel promotes about 5 to 10 sets per workout, per body part. I've settled in on about the 6 range. I don't like doing 4 sets of 10. I would rather do 2 sets to damn near failure and then go pick a different exercise and work the muscle from a variety of different angles. Because I believe people save themselves. If you know you're going to have to do 4 sets of hack squat, what's the likelihood you're going to invest everything into the first set? And I'll use incline dumbbell press as an example. Lots of people go to the gym, get on the incline, they'll grab the 60s and do 10 reps. Then they'll grab the 70s and do 10 reps. Then they'll grab the 80s and they'll do 10 reps. Then they'll grab the 100s and they'll knock out their top set, and they might be able to get 7, and their spotter helps them with a couple of reps. You didn't do 4 sets. You did 1 set. If the 60s, you could have done 20 reps. That's not a sufficient stimulus. So don't think about it just in terms of crossing T's and dotted I's and, and volume. But is that specific set, is that pretty close to failure? It doesn't have to be failure. I gave the example of your spotter helps you with a rep. It doesn't have to be failure. You can get just as big a stimulus by leaving 1 or 2 reps in the tank. You have to have worked hard, and don't use junk volume, and don't pre-exhaust your top set with 10, 10, 10 working up the rack. I would rather do 2, 2, 2 as far as warm-ups go, and then do 2 sets of the hundreds. And those I think are more effective sets. And then pick a different exercise or 2 different exercises. But I do about 6 sets. I'll do maybe 2 sets of 3 different exercises that way. I might squat first and then do a hack squat and then do a leg extension. Even with squats, I only do them because I love them, not because I think they benefit the muscles that I need the most work on. And so you have to be cautious, what you select. And so, frequency, volume, load, we talked about, tempo, range of motion, the exercises that you pick, generally the multi-joint movements you do first in the workout and do the smaller joints later. Rest periods. How important is this? And this goes to what you said. A lot of people go to the gym and try and burn calories. And so they're running through their workout with short rest periods, these little 30-second rest periods. It's like a CrossFit workout. Not the best stimulus for growth. Schoenfeld did another study. He showed 1-minute rest periods compared to 3-minute rest periods. The 3-minute rest period people had greater hypertrophy growth. And that's simply because when you do a set, you deplete certain metabolites in your system. A few things happen. One, your central nervous system is stressed, and it takes a couple, 3 minutes to recover. If it's a squat set, it might take 5 minutes. If it's a bicep curl, it might only take a minute. And so it's different for different body parts. Acid accumulation, we used to think was lactic acid, but it's really hydrogen ion buildup and your inability to process those out. And so you get acid buildup. Well, that takes time for your body to dissipate so that you can do another set with sufficient load. Remember, mechanical tension being the most important thing. You don't want the limiting factor to be the fact that you've got oxygen debt or you've got lactate clearance issues, or you don't want that to be the limiting factor. And then lastly, a creatine phosphate. Most of these sets are done in the creatine phosphate system, not in the glycolytic system. That depletes itself, and so you need a couple minutes for that creatine. Hopefully, you're taking creatine monohydrate, and adenosine triphosphate breaks down to adenosine diphosphate, and then you need a phosphate for the energy. And that's that first 10 to 15 seconds of energy, which is what most of these anaerobic weightlifting bouts are about. And so give it ample time. Rest at least 2 minutes between most sets. I think Dorian said one time after a heavy set of legs, it might take him 4 minutes to remember his name. And I'm in that camp. I rest longer. By UFC athletes, it's really hard to get them to adhere to that because they look at everything in terms of is this specific to the ring? And your training stimulus has nothing to do with your performance in your sport. It's simply to build either muscle or strength or both, depending on what the demands of your sport are. And the optimal stimulus for that is not to move fast through a bunch of different exercises. It's to get sufficient loading to create a stimulus and then to progress that over time. And you need the rest. And so these workouts may take longer and probably should take longer. One option for busy people is to utilize superset antagonistic body parts or opposing body parts. So you could do a dumbbell press for chest, rest for a minute, and then do a lat pull down. So you can do the antagonistic body part workouts, do a bench press, rest a minute, lat pull down, rest a minute, bench press, rest a minute. Now the rest between bench presses is over 2 minutes. And so you don't lose a significant amount of strength on the second and third set, or the second set in that case. If you're getting 10 reps on the first set and 6 reps in the second, you probably haven't rested long enough, and you're having too big of a decline in performance. One thing in terms of time saving, just because we're talking about busy professionals and sometimes just having, something's better than nothing and just getting there is important. But if, some people think if they can't get a sufficient workout in that why bother going? One is the warm up. It doesn't have to take you 45 minutes. You don't need to foam roll and all that other stuff. You can get on a salt bike and do 3 10-second sprints, and you'll be amply warmed up, and then go get under whatever exercise you're going to do and just use a lighter weight. And you can quickly progress into doing your exercises. Another would be post-workout. There's really no evidence that, well, this could be pre-workout as well. There's just no evidence that stretching, taking your time to static stretch, decreases injury or improves recovery. There's no evidence to that. Also, in terms of flexibility, there's equivalent outcomes between lifting through a full range of motion and doing static stretching. And static stretching provides no additional benefits. So just lift through a full range of motion. You'll get your flexibility benefits from that. And that's been researched as well. And I'm not shitting on stretching. I'm just saying we're talking about busy people. And that is not something that's going to add to, it's not going to increase performance. It's not going to increase flexibility. It's not going to decrease recovery time. So it's something you can cut out and do something else with your time.
Let's say, imagine I'm a guy that's in his early to mid 30s, somewhat unseasoned on the training side, maybe a year, 6 months in the gym, but I got about 20, 25 pounds of fat that I'm trying to lose. But I also want to kind of optimize the muscle building side of these things. So what should be the first thing that I focus on to really optimize and get me moving in that direction of body composition?
Well, I dial in the nutrition first. It's really, they say that muscles are built in the gym, but fat is lost in the kitchen. And if we want to lose body fat, then we got to get ourselves into a calorie deficit. We can do that one of two ways, or a combination of the both. And that's our energy balance equation. Total daily energy intake is all the food that we eat. And total daily energy expenditure, of course, is all the work that we do. But that consists of 4 different components, as you know. It's your basal metabolic rate, which is the vast majority of the calories you burn in a day. About 70+% of them are just keeping you alive. Your thermic effect of food, which is the amount of calories that you burn just consuming certain foods, protein being the highest of that. About 30% of the calories from protein are burned just digesting protein. Fats and carbs, much less than that, anywhere from 2 to 5%. Then you've got your non-exercise activity. This is a big one. Non-exercise activity is about 15% of the calories that you burn. And that's just kind of just moving around throughout the day. It can even be fidgeting, tapping your foot, that kind of thing. Maybe a step count. That's not a deliberate exercise. And then exercise activity is about 5% of the calories you burn every day. So that treadmill is not the most effective way to lose body fat. It's certainly great for your heart and for your lungs, and you can burn some calories there, but more cardio can be counterproductive at a point. You start burning fewer calories, you become more economical, and then what's called the constrained energy model starts to take over, whereby compensation, you go and bust your ass in the gym, and then you come home and you sit more and eat more. And that blows your calorie deficit out of the water, and it also causes you to lose your non-exercise activity thermogenesis benefit. So now you've got kind of a right pocket, left pocket thing going on. I'm going to train really hard for 30 minutes, and I'm going to sit around all day. I'd rather you did an exercise that rejuvenated you, something that wasn't quite as fatiguing, maybe just the ideal stimulus for hypertrophy, getting into the gym and lifting weights, and we can take a deeper dive into what that is. And then stay active throughout the day. That's what I would prefer. Stay on your feet. Get your 8,000 plus steps. Track it. Because when you're dieting, you tend to downregulate non-exercise activity. You find that your step count starts to decrease over time. And just because in a calorie deficit, you're going to have a little less energy. You're going to be a little more tired. So we can dive into those a little better and how to achieve the most optimal way to achieve a calorie deficit and the most optimal way to create the best hypertrophy stimulus. But that's the big picture there. And of course, I didn't mention sleep, and anybody who's ever heard from me knows that that's the foundation upon which everything sits. And you're going to need sufficient sleep in order to build muscle and burn fat. And the less sleep that you get, the more stingy your body becomes with fat. And you'll end up burning muscle and saving fat if you don't get sufficient sleep. So we'll just set that aside as an obvious goal to get 7+ hours of quality sleep.
I think the first thing you said, it was controlling the calories. So if we're talking about, the ideal foods, or, I know you're not, a real advocate of like attaching yourself too much to a specific diet, but for this average individual that is looking to, once again, lose body fat, gain muscle, we'll get into the training side of thing a little bit later on. What should they be prioritizing in terms of their macronutrients?
Yeah, let's start with the big picture, and we'll get down to the details. The big picture is the best diet's the one you'll follow. And I think as mentioned earlier, the number one problem with dieting is most people who go on a diet lose weight, but most people regain the weight.
It's about 95%, right?
Well, 50% after the first year, and then it starts to climb to 70, 90% after years 2 or 3. We see in the long-term diet trials comparing placebo to semaglutide, the weight loss medications, over 2 years, that the average weight loss maintenance over 2-year time period is a 2% weight loss in the general population. Whereas on the medications, it was anywhere from 17 to 23%, depending on which medication. So the point being, without getting distracted on the medication, is that on average, people only are able to maintain about 2% weight loss. And that's on average, understanding that individuals within that study, there's a lot of inter-individual variability. Some people gain significantly more than they lose. Others lose more weight than that. But there's a whole range, and I'm just saying on average. It's difficult to adhere to a diet long term. That's one of the biggest challenges we have. I've said in my obesity rant some 6-7 years ago, it's about changing behavior. That's a lot more difficult, than just working out or what have you. So calories are king. There's no question. And you need to maintain a calorie deficit in order to lose weight. And there's many paths to that destination. I said the best diet's the one you'll follow. If a keto diet allows you to adhere to that diet and allows you to lose weight and maintain a calorie deficit, then that's the best diet for you, the one that feels the least restrictive. If it's intermittent fasting, if it's paleo, if it's Mediterranean, if it's continuous calorie restriction, tracking your diet, your calories. I should say there's really only 3 ways to lose weight, what we call CR, DR, and TR. Calorie restriction is where you weigh and measure your food. That's one way to track your food and make sure you stay in a deficit. That's CR, calorie restriction. Dietary restriction, DR, is where you eliminate certain foods. That's your keto group, eliminate carbs. That's your vegan group. It's your carnivore group. Whatever you eliminate, paleo, everything a caveman didn't eat. If you choose to eliminate things from your diet, you're undergoing some form of dietary restriction. And that can be effective for weight loss, presuming it allows you to maintain a calorie deficit and you can adhere to it. It doesn't feel restrictive to you. You don't binge or overeat or relapse. The other one is TR, that's time restriction. That's your intermittent fasting, whether you do a 16-8 or a 24 or an alternate day fast or multiple day fastings. It all falls under that same category. Those are your 3 options. That's all there are. Every single diet that's ever been invented, including the vertical diet, falls under one of those 3 categories. The vertical diet tends to focus on continuous calorie restriction. We track calories. I ask for pictures of the meals and to use MyFitnessPal so that you can actually keep track of everything that you consume. So you pick one of those 3 paths or a combination thereof. We have the keto intermittent fast group. Remember those guys that, even notable people like Dr. Peter Attia was a big fan of both of those at one time. And he's since moved past that era and has evolved to understand that it is just calories. And however you are able to meet that requirement or restriction, it's whatever best suits you for your lifestyle and you can adhere to long term, then have at it. And I'm not going to argue one being better than the other. If we wanted to talk specifically about performance, I would make some arguments as to the deficiencies of a keto or intermittent fasting diet with respect to top performance for the 1%ers. But generally speaking, whether you eat 2 meals a day or 6 meals a day, when you control for calories and protein, there's no difference in weight loss or body composition between any of those dietary choices. And I think that's a good thing. I'm not trying to, insult anybody's diet plan. I'm trying to say that you have options, you have choices. And that way people don't feel as though if they failed on a particular diet that they thought was the best or the only way, they understand that just doesn't work for them and they can find, an alternate plan. So calories are king. And then you mentioned macros, and I talked about protein. You control for calories and protein. Protein's important. Protein does have a couple of pretty significant benefits. One I talked about earlier was the thermic effect of food. For every 100 calories of protein you consume, you net out about 70. So it's just, you get more food with fewer calories. So, plus protein obviously supports lean tissue, which is, we're focused on fat loss, not muscle loss. And so we want to get sufficient protein to support lean tissue, which from the bulk of the research and the evidence out there seems to be about 1.6 grams of protein per pound of lean weight. So a lean 200-pound person might only need about 160 grams of protein. There's a reason why you might consume more, and that's the third benefit of protein, and that's it's very satiating. And people who are very lean, or people who are older and have anabolic resistance, or people who are trying to diet and have a hard time controlling their hunger, those are all three great reasons where you might eat more protein, a gram per pound or 1.2 grams per pound. There's no evidence that protein has any adverse health effects in those higher amounts. That's from the ISSN. They've done protein overfeeding studies up to 2 and even 3 grams per pound and haven't seen any adverse. That's Dr. Jose Antonio. Hasn't seen any adverse effects for high protein intakes in terms of kidney or liver or anything like that. So you don't need it, but it may be beneficial in a calorie deficit for those reasons mentioned: lean mass retention, satiety, thermic effect of food. So once you've controlled for calories and protein, now you've got carbs and fats. And from the DietFits trial out of Stanford, over 600 participants tracked for a year, they found that it didn't really matter. High protein or high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat, it didn't matter. And really the best diet was the one that you could adhere to. So if you prefer more fats, then eat more fats. If you prefer more carbs, eat more carbs. It becomes the one that becomes a lifestyle that you enjoy. And I know there are people out there that try and purvey the carbohydrate insulin model. We've heard that if you raise your insulin, that you can't burn fat. It's patently false. It's been proven over and over again, as the DietFits trial proved. There was no difference in glycemic index as well. So the carbohydrate insulin model, which is still popular, unbelievable to me because we have so many human randomized controlled trials showing that high carb or low carb or high fat or low fat has equivalent outcomes, health outcomes, fat loss outcomes, blood sugar outcomes, that it's really, I don't know why it's still argued. And generally it's not argued amongst the domain-specific nutrition professionals, those with PhDs in nutrition. It's argued amongst chiropractors and journalists and other cardiologists who don't have any nutrition training. And they've been called out over and over again on social media. Dr. Jason Fung is an example of one who's a carbohydrate insulin model guy. Dr. Gary Taub's book, Good Calories, Bad Calories, was based on that. I think Nina Teicholz was hers. I forget the name of her book, but same thing. I think these are all carbohydrate insulin model people. More recently, I think Eddie Abu has been very popular recently, talking about you eat sugar, wake the fuck up. And as long as he's swearing and speaking with loudly and with confidence, people tend to listen to him. But the fact is the research doesn't support it. So I don't mean to belabor the point, but it doesn't matter for the general population that we're speaking to. In terms of performance, I would prefer to keep the fats a little lower and put more carbs in because you want to fuel workouts. I would also say this as an aside in terms of general health. We do have compelling evidence, multiple converging lines of evidence with epidemiology, with human randomized controlled trials, and now the genetic Mendelian randomization research showing that higher saturated fat diets will, for a significant portion of the population, increase LDL cholesterol, which is an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Not the only risk factor, but an independent risk factor. And so I would recommend keeping saturated fats under 10% of total calories and getting blood tests to find out just how sensitive you are to ApoB and LDL elevations. So I can't make specific recommendations for fats and carbs for the general population. I just want to say that it's for your personal preference to, as long as your calories are under control and your protein's sufficient, and to eat. Now, we've done calories, we've done macros. The next step is going to be micronutrients, and those should be sufficiently satisfied if you get most of your food from whole food sources and have a variety of foods. It can be a lean proteins, lean red meat, chicken, fish, salmon would be preferable because of the omega-3s. Egg white blends if you're trying to control fats, but certainly eggs can be helpful. And dairy, another fantastic one. Stu Phillips, McMaster University, just put forth some good research on dairy showing it has an independent effect on BMI, on body composition, and performance. And so dairy is a good one, particularly yogurt, because it's fermented, is really good for the digestive system. Again, the Sonnenberg trials out of Stanford showed that 100% of the population of the participants in their studies who used fermented foods had an improvement in diversity and density of their microbiome. So their gut health was improved. Whereas when they did fiber, they found a third of the group had adverse results to fiber because their claim was that they probably had compromised microbiome already, and so they couldn't digest that much fiber. But fiber is still, from all the research, suggests that fiber is beneficial for digestion and for long-term health for those people who can tolerate the fibers, which, my diet talks specifically about types of fibers that might aggravate certain people, the FODMAPs. And I don't know if I should say this last or if we already talked about it first, but knowing now that the calories are king and how to break down your macronutrients and to get sufficient micronutrients from a variety of whole unprocessed foods, you're back to compliance is the science. You're back to how can I adhere to a deficit so I don't get hungry? And that takes us into a conversation about satiety, the types of foods that keep you full. We mentioned protein, we mentioned fiber. There's also a satiety index that rates foods based on people's perception of hunger after they've consumed them. And you can just Google satiety index and see that real high on that list is foods like boiled potatoes and oranges. Certainly high protein and high fiber foods are on there as well. But that's something that I try and utilize, satiety. I have a kind of a satiety toolkit. I give people tips on how to stay full, how to replace hyper-palatable, ultra-processed, nutrient-dense foods with more satiating foods in your kitchen, like getting rid of the ice cream and bringing in fat-free Greek yogurt and strawberries or blueberries. Those kinds of swaps need to be there to help with compliance so that you don't end up overeating your snack foods. And keep those other things out of the house. It's not to say they can't be a small part of a balanced diet plan, but it should be onerous in order for you to obtain them. They shouldn't be right there handy. And you should have an alternative, whether it's popcorn or the Greek yogurt or some other alternative that's lower calorie, that's more satiating, that you can sit there and munch on out of habit when you're not really hungry, but you're just, passing some time in front of Netflix at night.
Recently went viral for I don't know if it's a quote that you shared or something you shared on another podcast about sleep being more necessary, I guess. I'm not exactly sure how you phrase it, but sleep being more important than cardio for fat loss. And I've also heard you say that you don't prescribe steady state cardio to your clients. So I'd love for you to maybe start by explaining how those two can be true if the driver of weight loss is actually a calorie deficit.
That's good. Yeah. What I said and what I've been saying for many years is that if you're waking up at 4 a.m. to do cardio, after only 5 hours of sleep, you're stepping over $100 bills to pick up nickels. I think it's important to recognize that sleep is the foundation upon which everything else sits. If you don't get sufficient sleep, you end up burning more muscle and the body becomes stingy with the fat. You end up increasing ghrelin hormone, so you're hungrier during the day. You are not recovering from your training sessions sufficiently. You're awake more hours during the day, which just gives you more opportunity to get hungry and eat another meal. All of those things, for me, make it such that I prioritize sleep with my clients. And I find that that is something that is deficient in the vast majority of people that I work with. We're all burning the candle at both ends, trying to get ahead. And we're not even giving ourselves an opportunity to be successful. We're getting to bed at midnight and having to wake up at 5. Or if we get to bed at 11, then we're scrolling through social media. It's not actually sleep. If I can encourage folks just to, first of all, set aside a time frame under which they could potentially be successful, 7+ hours is the recommended dose, and then try and work towards what I call good sleep hygiene, avoiding the blue lights, your telephone, the TV, at least an hour before bed, sleeping in a cold, quiet, dark room, and waking up early and getting exposed to sunlight so you can set your circadian rhythms for the day and so that you're actually tired at night to go to sleep. So I'm straying off from the original question, trying to point out all the ways in which you can optimize sleep. But yes, I would much prefer people slept than do cardio. Now, the specific answer to cardio, I think cardio is great for health, for heart health. You can get cardio many ways. It doesn't have to be steady state cardio. Cardio is not that good for weight loss. I know that's hard to hear, but the fact of the matter is that we don't burn as many calories as we think during doing cardio. Your body becomes efficient at it over time. We also tend to overestimate the number of calories that we burn doing cardio. It's not terribly enjoyable. It's not something people do consistently for the long term, adhere to. So I don't try and set people up for failure by giving them 30, 40 minutes of treadmill. There's a significant barrier to entry. You got to get in your car, you got to drive to the gym, you got to do your 40 minutes of treadmill, and you got to come home. We're going to abandon that very quickly in a program that isn't consistent with our lifestyle and convenient to adhere to. Also, there's the problem with compensation. It seems like the more exercise that we do, what we call exercise activity, we get hungry and we get tired and we sit more and eat more. What we end up doing is down-regulating the activity that we do for the rest of the day. It becomes kind of a left pocket, right pocket sort of deal. So I encourage cardio. I usually promote a 10-minute walk after each meal because it has so many more benefits other than, it's something that you can fit into your day. It provides you all the cardiovascular benefit, helps with digestion and blood sugar control and all those things. And it's something that can be more adhered to better. And then your workouts, we should all be lifting weights. Those are a significant cardiovascular benefit. You're going to get your heart rate elevated for an extended period of time. I mean, if you're lifting hard enough to get a result, you're breathing hard, So and that kind of summarizes, some folks think I'm averse to cardio. I do 30 to 40 minutes of cardio a day, but I do it in 10-minute walks. So I've been able to do it consistently for 10 years, even though I travel all over the world very often. I'm always able to get my 30, 40 minutes of cardio in wherever I am, whether it's at a hotel or an airport or you name it. And I do it with those little exercise snacks. I think somebody coined that term. I just do little 10-minute walks. And then I don't actually have to do cardio, which I don't enjoy anyhow. You'd never catch me on a treadmill for 40 minutes. Just unbelievably boring. I just don't think it's terribly effective, to be honest. I'd rather invest that time into something that I got a bigger return on. Yeah, the next one's going to be diet and specifically calories. If you want to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You had mentioned fasted cardio or burning calories before you eat. And some people talk about intermittent fasting. Some people talk about the carbohydrate insulin model of weight loss. None of that is any more important than maintaining a calorie deficit, which can be done any number of ways. I have my personal preference because I try and fuel people for training so that they have an efficient training stimulus for anaerobic weightlifting. But that having been said, there's numerous paths to the same destination, and the best diet's the one you'll follow. And that can be very individualistic as to which one seems the least restrictive to you, which one's the most satiating, which one can you adhere to without succumbing to hunger and overeating, because that's the bottom line. And so I think Dr. Peter Attia summed it up best by saying there's really only 3 different ways to create a calorie deficit. It's CR, TR, and DR. It's calorie restriction, which is what many of us are familiar with. You get your app out and you track everything you eat. You weigh and measure your food and put it in little Tupperwares. You look at the labels on foods that you eat, and you try and maintain a calorie deficit that way. There's TR, time restriction. We're all familiar with the 16-8. And if you can't lose weight on a 16-8, then you got to go 18-6 or 24 or 22-2 if you're eating so much in a 2-hour window that you can't maintain a calorie deficit. But that's just time restriction. That's all it is. It's no better than continuous calorie restriction or counting calories. But it may be more preferable to some people. They may be less hungry. I can come up with a list of reasons why you shouldn't do it, and we can talk about those. But the next one is dietary restriction. I said CR, TR, and DR, caloric restriction, time restriction, and then dietary restriction. And that's these camps that eliminate certain food groups. That's your vegans, your carnivores, your keto folks. They just eliminate certain foods. If you eliminate carbs, you're probably going to end up in a calorie deficit. If you eliminate all meats or, paleo, you just eliminate everything that cavemen didn't eat, you're generally eating more whole food, which tends to be more satiating. But that's all that is. And it's no better than continuous calorie restriction. And you really shouldn't be demonizing most foods, certainly most whole foods. And so those are the 3 paths. And I have clients that opt for carnivore. I have clients that are keto. I have clients that are vegan. The vast majority of them utilize a calorie restriction model with omnivorous, very diverse, mostly whole food diet. Generally, I put them in at about 30% protein, 35% protein. As a percentage of total calories, which is not the greatest way to calculate it because based on people's weight, you just want to make sure they get sufficient protein, around 0.8 grams per pound of body weight or 1 gram per pound of lean weight. And then I put in about 30 or less percent of fat, and the rest are carbs. And I say the rest in quotation marks because that's based on your workload. If you're a very active individual and playing sports, then you might need a lot more carbs than somebody who's more sedentary. So I base that off of the original calories that we allot for your goals, whether it's a surplus or a deficit for weight gain or weight loss. So it's kind of a real quick way to look at diets in general that doesn't offend, hopefully, too many people. And it's more inclusive. I welcome everybody under the tent who's with their specific preferences. I just want to make sure not to demonize anything or to make the claim that any path is better than the other on the whole.
What I've seen, Stan, here, that's something that makes you truly, I don't know if you're the only one, but it's definitely unique in our space, right? Is this non-attachment to a specific way to do something. You're more focused on the outcome and how can we assist and maybe guide and give the support, accountability, structure that somebody needs, but you're not tied to, like you said, you got clients that are in the carnivore space, you got kind of clients that are vegan, vegetarian, a lot of them are probably following your vertical diet approach, which we're definitely going to get to here later on. But how have you been able to, in an industry that is so muddled with this dogma, like separate yourself? But really, I think it makes you stand out. I definitely want to circle back to that because that's really the world that I live and kind of operate in, is this kind of behavioral change. How do we kind of inject these positive habits that are going to produce positive outcomes, real transformation in our life? So I definitely want to circle back there, but I want to touch on something that you were talking about when you went through the CR, TR, and DR is you made a slight comment around maybe the time restricted, the fasting, maybe not being the best approach for people, which I'd love for you to maybe kind of, unpack that here a little bit, because I think if you go online these days, it's like you will see people screaming from the mountaintop that fasting is the most effective way to lose weight. It's there's obviously, I believe there's a lot of benefit. It's really helped me, but why specifically for, I guess, fat loss would fasting not be a good, effective approach?
I think fasting would be a great approach for weight loss. I don't think it's any better than calorie restriction or dietary restriction. And the research bears that out. It's whatever diet you can adhere to. They've had thousands of studies now on different diets, and long-term adherence, dietary adherence is pretty similar. It's pretty poor overall, to be honest, as we know. Over 50% of people gain the weight back within a year, and somewhere north of 70 to 90% of people gain the weight back within 3 years. Most of these long-term studies show on average about a 2% weight loss over 3 to 5 years. That's why when medications like semaglutide come onto the scene and they show a 17 to 23% average weight loss after 3 years, it starts to raise your eyebrows. What it pinpoints is that hunger, because that's what semaglutide does, it suppresses appetite. Hunger is the reason people fail on diets. And that's why I spend so much time talking about satiety and compliance and which diet is the least restrictive, that makes you the least hungry, because that's where you're going to end up failing. Willpower is not a good strategy. You'll lose that battle every time. The body is incredible at getting what it wants. And so you have to get in front of it. We have a kind of a toolbox of things that we can utilize to get in front of hunger, because once it hits you consciously, you're in trouble. You have to kind of subconsciously get in front of it so that you experience very little and less often hunger. And the toolbox obviously includes eating more protein, eating more fiber, drinking more water before or during meals, getting more sleep. Even the 10-minute walks, even getting 6,000 steps a day helps with some satiety benefit. Eating mostly whole foods and less ultra-processed, highly palatable foods. Those kinds of things all lend themselves well to satiety. Okay, so back to intermittent fasting. Now, I mentioned that I design diets for what I believe are people that should be exercising, particularly weightlifting. I've worked with lots and lots of athletes over the years. People are familiar with a lot of the famous athletes that I've worked with. I design diets for performance. And that's including dad bods and soccer moms. I think that performance is pretty important. I think form follows function and that everybody should be lifting weights. And the optimal weightlifting stimulus is, anaerobic. It's to within a rep or two of failure. It's, something that you should do at least 3 days a week. I'm designing a diet that includes sufficient food. We know the International Society of Sports Nutrition recommends getting at least 3. They talk about 4 evenly spaced protein feedings a day. There's no mechanism in the body to store protein. And so once it's gone, it's gone. And your body, if it has repairs to make, it has to wait till you feed it again. I'm not saying you're going to lose 10 pounds of muscle because you missed a meal, but we're talking about optimizing performance as it relates to sports performance. In the International Society of Sports Nutrition, they're recommending about 4 evenly spaced meals a day with a minimum of about 30 plus grams of protein to trigger muscle protein synthesis. So they don't even encourage snacking, let alone missing a meal. 78% of successful dieters in the weight control registry, which has tracked over 10,000 dieters for more than 6 years who have lost 60 pounds and kept it off, they eat breakfast. 78% of successful dieters. So it's not as though eating breakfast is a hack. If you're not hungry as a result of skipping breakfast, then that's fine. That's a way for you to comply with your diet and not be hungry. That's great. But now we're seeing some other research beyond the sports research and getting sufficient protein periodically throughout the day to maintain or fuel muscle. We're seeing in terms of what's called chrononutrition. And that's where eating breakfast can help with sleep at night. Now the intermittent fasting community is suggesting maybe you do eat breakfast and you skip dinner. We see that in study groups, those that eat the larger breakfast tend to eat less for lunch and dinner. They tend to have what's called reduced postprandial glycemia. They have less blood sugar elevation and duration after breakfast because they're most insulin sensitive in the morning. And it also seems to carry over to subsequent meals where your lunch there has less postprandial glycemia when you eat a sufficient breakfast, particularly a high protein breakfast. If people do want to intermittent fast, I'd suggest they skip dinner, not breakfast, because there's a whole host of benefits to waking up in the morning and eating breakfast. It's when you're hungry, your insulin sensitivity is the best. Your muscles are most in need after that long fast. Cortisol is elevated, and that helps. You can help blunt that by eating breakfast. That would be my suggestion. My daughter doesn't eat breakfast, and it frustrates me to no end, but I don't force her to do it. And my son, of course, he loves to eat breakfast. And so I just make sure that she gets sufficient calories and protein throughout the rest of the day. I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that it isn't just as equivalent or just as potentially beneficial for weight loss if you can maintain a calorie deficit with it. But I think all of those other reasons that I mentioned makes it less beneficial for performance, sleep, blood sugar control, a whole host of things that we have measured. And some people will weigh in and say, well, when you fast for an extended period of time, you experience autophagy. There's no evidence that a 12-hour window and a 16-hour window are any different with respect to long-term health. We just don't have any outcome trials on humans that suggest that fasting provides an additional lifespan or health span benefit, as opposed to just not eating for 12 hours between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. And autophagy is obtained simply from exercise itself. And so it's not as though you need to skip meals to get those benefits. So that's really kind of, there may be a few other things I'm forgetting, but off the top of my head, that's, I'm not trying to shit on anybody's diet. I make some recommendations to the keto people as well. I think that a high saturated fat keto diet can lead to elevated LDL, which is a known causal risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So you'd want to do a high monounsaturated fat, lower saturated fat keto diet if that's what you intended to do. We know that people on a keto diet tend to lose glycogen, which is 3 parts water, which is 70% sodium. And so oftentimes they end up getting low in electrolytes. It's probably the biggest contributor to what's called the keto flu when people get tired from going keto. It might not necessarily be the carbohydrates. It's probably the hydration portion. It's probably the sodium reduction that's occurring. And so I make those recommendations with respect to keto as well. I think there's always pros and cons to, and with the continuous calorie restriction, some people just don't like weighing and measuring and tracking their food. They can create an unhealthy relationship with food that way. So there's certainly disorders to be addressed with any type of dieting.
Going back to that initial question. So that guy that's, early to mid 30s, overweight, hasn't really been trained his entire life. I'm assuming just based on the world that we live in today, the data shows that men's hormone levels are in the tanks. This guy's probably maybe suffering from some low T. How important is for him to get that optimized first, or will some of these dietary changes have carryover effects, or does he need to get that optimized to really be able to get the benefits from what we're talking about here?
Man, you are all over it, brother. That's another excellent transition to the fourth leg of the stool. We talked about sleeping, we talked about eating, and we talked about training. The next component to that is going to be your medical status. It's going to be your blood testing and whatever necessary hormonal interventions you may need to optimize your fitness. Or medication if you've got high blood pressure or low thyroid, hypogonadism, testosterone. Whether or not you're going to need to do some sort of medical intervention for abnormally high familial hypercholesterolemia. You get a blood test for that. Look at your lipids if your LDLs are out of whack. You said something interesting there. Do we intervene first with the medical, or does some of the lifestyle help with those problems? I believe you start with lifestyle. I believe you get a blood test first. Let's get a baseline. Let's figure out where you're at. And so that we know whatever we're doing, we can measure whether or not it's having the necessary effect. So blood test is first. And then I said this in my Iceland seminar some 7 years ago. It's got almost 7 million views now, where I went up to Iceland and Hafþór Bjornsson did a presentation up there. It's 2 hours long. I go over every detail of the vertical diet. And as I mentioned, there's some things in there I would probably deliver differently, but it was a specific audience of bodybuilders, powerlifters, and strongmen. But I said, look, hormones have a huge impact on your ability to lose weight, say your hypothyroidism, on your ability to gain muscle, whether it's hypogonadism, and then just general health. So get the blood test, and then start to implement a lifestyle plan. Reduce the saturated fat, reduce your calories, get some weight loss, exercise regularly. Start with the walks and a couple of visits to the gym a week. Try and optimize your sleep, and now we're talking sleep apnea. If that's another medical consideration, if you're holding your breath and snoring at night and waking up tired, you might have some degree of apnea, and that's an intervention that is most likely benefited from weight loss. So you might try lifestyle first there as well. But if you can't remedy apnea, that'll have a huge impact on your blood pressure, on your blood sugars, on your energy levels, and you may need to get a CPAP to resolve your sleep apnea. Go hard for 30 to 60 days, and be consistent, trying to optimize your sleep and your nutrition and lose some body fat. I said on the Tom Bilyeu podcast that 95% of health benefits are realized strictly from weight loss itself, irrespective of diet. And I was skewered on social media for it, but it is a fact, and it's researched very well. And I said I would never recommend the McDonald's diet, but even with the McDonald's diet, we see improvements in biomarkers like blood pressure and blood sugar and lipids from weight loss. And I would not recommend a McDonald's diet for a number of reasons. Hard to comply with in terms of satiety, micronutrient deficiencies, potentially high in saturated fat, ultra-processed foods, etc. But if you can lose weight on any diet, you can realize health outcome improvements. Try and lose the weight, try and sleep a little better, try and exercise consistently, and then get another blood test 60 days later. And look at the markers that were out of range that you were concerned about. How much improvement did you realize from that intervention? And now if 60 days later or 90 days later, whatever time period it takes you to have a substantial change in your body weight, if you're 20, 30 pounds overweight, what we see in the literature is a 7% weight loss. It seems to be a pretty good initial driver of these health benefits. This is some of the research from the diabetes in particular. You can resolve about 50% of your NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver, and dramatically reduce your blood sugars. Of 15% weight loss. Now, this is what I tried to accomplish with some of my athletes. If they're 300 pounds and you lose 45 pounds, a 15% weight loss can reverse type 2 diabetes for those people who already don't have pancreatic failure. You can restore pancreatic beta cell function with about a 15% weight loss on average, irrespective of how you lose it, I hate to say. But that can be pretty dramatic. So plug that number in if you're particularly compromised in terms of your metabolic health from your excess body fat. If you have elevated HA1C, fasted blood glucose, fasted insulin, high triglycerides, that's a great number to shoot for. If you're a 300-pound person, lose 45 pounds. How long does that take? At 1 to 2% body fat loss per week. you're looking, you can do that in 60 days, thereabouts, 60, 90 days. So go hard on that. Make that your goal. Lose that 15% if you can get there. 7 would be great. Get a second blood test. Call it 90 days. See what's improved or hasn't improved. And if you still have hypothyroidism, you might need to see a doctor and find out if you've got Hashimoto's, or if you have some autoimmune disease. If you still have low tests, you got to go in and have a doctor find out what type of testosterone deficiency you have and why. Remedying those problems does have a significant impact on your health markers. Thyroid has a huge impact on lipids. If your LDL is significantly elevated and your thyroid's, you've got high TSH, meaning low thyroid, fixing that could fix the LDL. If you've got low testosterone, fixing that, maybe you have to get on testosterone therapy, could have a significant effect on your lean body mass and your ability to have the energy to want to go to the gym. And so those things become rewarding and more likely for you to comply with long term. So those are just some primary, some preliminary examples. LDL would be the other major one, other than blood sugars and blood pressure and testosterone and thyroid. Some people are hyperabsorbers of cholesterol and may not be able to eat eggs. About 20% of the population will convert esterified cholesterol into blood cholesterol and raise LDL. And some people, from whether it's from familial hypercholesterolemia or from insufficient clearance of cholesterol or too much saturated fat consumption, reducing the LDL receptors in the liver, may recirculate cholesterol to such a degree that they've got elevated LDL or ApoB, and might have to eat even less saturated fat or avoid eggs or increase fiber or a combination of all of those. And if lifestyle doesn't work, then you may be a candidate, depending on your other risk factors, and maybe a CAC scan or a coronary angiography to look for soft plaque in the arteries. You may be a candidate for some medical intervention, which doesn't necessarily have to be statins, because we have ezetimibe is a cholesterol lowering medication that's not a statin. PCSK9 inhibitors are extraordinarily effective. They're not a statin. So if you have an aversion to try statins, but nowadays the statins have evolved to where they have a lot fewer side effects, and they can use low-dose combo therapy as recommended by Dr. Tom Dayspring. An ezetimibe rosuvastatin combination in very low dose, incredibly effective. Lane Norton has used, maybe is still using statins because he couldn't get his LDL down under 130, and he eats 60 grams of fiber a day. He's huge on fiber, and eats a low saturated fat diet, but genetically he's just unable to get his LDL down. Dr. Soko, who's a PhD exercise phys, Dr_SOKO on Instagram, uses a PCSK9 inhibitor and has his LDL cholesterol down in the 50s or 60s, similar to what you were when you were 8 to 12 years old. And we see evidence that with the Mendelian randomization, that people whose cholesterol is in the 50s and 60s and below, their ApoB in particular, never acquire atherosclerotic plaques, and will go their whole life without that being a potential factor for cardiovascular disease. So that may be a longer conversation, but I'm just saying that you hit on an important point. Get a blood test, use your lifestyle interventions, maximize those, get a subsequent test, see a doctor if you need medical intervention to address any of the other issues.
Yeah, it runs consistent with this entire conversation. Become your own case study. Look at yourself as a researcher of your own lifestyle. Have that data, look at it over time, compare it, realizing that these are going to be long-term, lasting lifestyle changes that we're aiming for. Nothing's going to happen overnight, but through these small tweaks, modifications, looking at the data, getting feedback, you can make sustainable long-term progress with these. Touch on supplements here a little bit. Once again, knowing that none of them are going to be the one-all fix-all, but what are the kind of the recommended mandatory. Once again, speaking to that initial individual that we talked about at the beginning, right? Like what would be the recommendation in terms of overall supplements and staying away from the snake oil salesman that some of the media influencers are kind of shilling out today.
There's a lot of that out there. I usually, as a subcategory under food, I put supplements and hydration, but they're very important, and I'll talk about them separately here. When I talk about the legs on the stool, eat, sleep, train, and then blood testing and medication. And under eat, I address in my vertical diet ebook at great length proper hydration and supplementation. Supplements. You can get a blood test to show you if you're deficient in vitamin D. That's a very common deficiency, vitamin D25 hydroxy. And you can look at magnesium, although your blood will maintain its magnesium levels by stealing it from elsewhere. And so sometimes it's hard to tell in serum whether or not you're magnesium deficient. But a lot of people are magnesium deficient. Those are the two big ones. They're hard to get from diet. Vitamin D3, hard to get from diet. Magnesium, kind of hard to get from diet. Those are two supplements that I put in kind of as a staple, or at least check your vitamin D3 status, maybe 2,000 IUs of vitamin D. When I was vitamin D deficient, I had to take 10,000 IUs for 3 months just to get my vitamin D from like 26 or so up to 50. Having said that, if you're in the normal physiological range with vitamin D, adding more vitamin D doesn't give you any additional benefit. And so I'm not a big fan of megadosing. We saw that in the Linus Pauling era where, he megadosed a host of things, vitamin A, et cetera, which actually led to an increased risk of certain health outcomes. So I'm not a megadosing fan. So 2,000 to 4,000 IUs of vitamin D3 a day I kind of put in, and then about 400 milligrams of magnesium a day. Bisglycinate is one that I like because it's highly absorbable and it doesn't cause diarrhea, or has less likely to, because magnesium can be a stool softener. And I put that in at dinner time because there seems to be some evidence it might help with sleep as well, but it's a small thing. And also, if we're going to talk about micronutrients, potassium and magnesium and calcium all help with blood pressure regulation. Significantly so, in such that the DASH diet trials that were intended to reduce sodium for blood pressure recognized that they had that the potassium increase, fruits and vegetables, 4,700 milligrams of potassium a day, probably had as protective effect as the sodium reduction. And so potassium is another big one that you can get from food that I don't supplement and wouldn't recommend supplementing. It can be hard on the lining of the stomach. And I think they limit it to 100 milligrams, and there can be some arrhythmia issues with overdosing potassium. Insufficient potassium could cause arrhythmia. And so we got to be cautious about probably using that as a dietary intervention, which I didn't mention under macronutrients, that when I go to carbs, I usually pick high potassium carbs first. A potato has twice the potassium of a banana, and fruit, yogurt. If you get those three in on a daily basis, you're gonna be pretty close to your potassium total, which is kind of hard to get. You got to be deliberate about it. Those are my two big vitamins. You can take a multivitamin if you wanted to satisfy all those requirements. I'd just be cautious that men don't take iron. We see more iron surplus in men than iron deficits. And men can't clear iron, and especially men on testosterone, they'll tend to, their iron will start to go up. And so that'll be one of the things that you test with your blood test, is make sure that your ferritin, your stored iron, isn't elevated. And women, on the other hand, they do lose iron. They end up oftentimes becoming anemic from their diets and their training and the menstrual period. And so we do recommend that they have a higher iron diet, which would be more red meat, lean red meats in the diet. And women tend to demonize red meat, and that can obviously result in lack of iron intake. And it kind of happens with those guru diets. So I talked about women get pretty restrictive, and they'll eat egg whites and protein powder and broccoli and whitefish and end up not getting sufficient micronutrients, biotin from the yolk of the egg for skin, hair, and nails, and iron from the red meat, calcium from the dairy that they're demonizing. It's very common for women to demonize all of those foods. Fruits, women tend to demonize fruits because Eddie Abu told them that fruits are full of sugar and you'll get fat and you won't be able to, and you'll get diabetic. It's just tragic that people like him and the glucose goddess make these recommendations, and then people listen to them, and then they end up with health problems and micronutrient deficiencies. So women, we do like to see iron. Men, be cautious. My iron skyrocketed when I was using a cast iron pan a lot. It's just a cautionary note. If you don't know, if you don't get your blood test, but that's something that you should consider. And we don't want to over donate either. If you're donating blood as a result of erythrocytosis from RBC hemoglobin hematocrit elevation from testosterone therapy, be careful not to over donate. You might give yourself anemia, and then you'll be exhausted for however long it takes you to get your iron back up. So I throw all those in there. And then as far as performance supplements goes, protein powders, whey protein, it's just food in a can. If you get your 1.6 grams of protein from your food, then you don't need whey. But if it's convenient and it tastes good and it supplements or augments a meal, or if in the absence of a meal post-workout, if you're traveling or something, it's certainly an option. It's not magic. It doesn't do any better than the 1.6 grams of protein you can get from food. And so it isn't a performance enhancer in that regard. Creatine does seem to have some performance benefits, but I'll tell you, when you read Stu Phillips' review of all the creatine research, it becomes less and less compelling as to its long-term benefits for strength or hypertrophy, or even the cognitive benefits that people have been claiming lately. It'll soften your enthusiasm for it when you find how minimal the benefits are. It's not steroids, never will be, but there's no harm. I say that about a multivitamin too. I think it was the physician study of over 40,000 men for 10 years or greater on multivitamins suggested that there was no long-term health benefits from taking a multivitamin or not taking a multivitamin. But the author of the study said, hey, what it doesn't cause any harm. What does it hurt? It's cheap. It might help some people who have deficiencies, but for the vast majority of the population, probably not measurable or meaningful in terms of long-term health. I'd say the same thing about, certainly about creatine. What can it hurt? It's pretty cheap. Creatine monohydrate. You don't need any special creatine, although I would say that some people do get gastric distress from creatine monohydrate and might opt for the creatine HCl if they felt as though it gave them a performance benefit, and that would be tends to cause less gastric distress. That's kind of it on supplements for me, to be honest with you. Omega-3s, if you're not eating sufficient salmon, which I try and get at least 2 or 3 5-ounce servings of salmon in a week, which would give you adequate omega-3s based on what the research suggests. And then, beyond that, I don't really have many supplement recommendations that aren't specific to somebody's diagnosed deficiency.
Kirsten, just your life and career of working with thousands of individuals. Obviously, you've had massive success in the high performance world, World's Strongest Man, the UFC, all these kind of guys. But to the everyday individual, knowing all this information it's readily available. It's free. Everybody knows what to eat, what not to eat, how to train, how to sleep, what to supplement. We probably didn't give people a lot of new information here today, But what is it that keeps so many people from actually achieving their goals?
Wow, if I knew that. I was at a seminar with Hafthor Bjornsson once, and somebody asked him, how do you stay motivated? And Hafthor kind of made this nice answer. We got in the car to drive away, and he was pissed. He goes, I don't know how fucking people can ask that. Either you are or you aren't. How do you not be motivated? He's a Viking. He was born motivated. He's a type A guy. He's just driven. And I hope that everyone can find a passion in their lives, as we did with our fitness, whether it was competing in bodybuilding or powerlifting or whatever your endeavor is. I hope everyone can find that passion, which is why I say the best exercise is the one you'll do. I picked up pickleball recently, of all things. I'm embarrassed to say how far can one man fall from his peak. And I really enjoy it. I go down here and play indoor pickleball every day with a bunch of the Islanders here. And I love it, and I wish people that same enjoyment in whatever endeavor contributes to their health. That would include diet and exercise, both. I hope that they could find a diet plan that they enjoyed consistently, foods that they could eat that lent themselves to better body composition and long-term health. If I had the answer to that, we talked about the fact that some people just need to be held accountable. I never need anybody to hold me accountable. I sought out the best coaches and training partners I could find to compete with them or impress them in some way, and to learn from them and to be able to measurably progress whatever goal it was I was pursuing at the time, whether it was powerlifting or bodybuilding. So that's the $64 million question right there. It's how do you motivate folks? Some people are motivated people are motivated for very many different reasons, in spite of someone, on behalf of someone, and for themselves, for money, for accolades and recognition. There's many different reasons why people get motivated. I just hope that I really do wish that everyone could find something that really that they really enjoyed in life, that contributed to their. It doesn't always have to be health necessarily, but it just gave them a sense of purpose and a sense of passion, so that that pursuit of happiness, which is not a destination, it's a journey, as is all of everything we discussed today, becomes meaningful to them,
Well, if people could understand that it truly is about the journey, that's the hacking of the reward system, right? That's understanding that that's where your joy, your passion, your fulfillment is going to be found, and setting realistic, attainable goals that are meaningful to you, but it's really about the pursuit of those on a daily basis. And when you can have structure and you can be intentional and you can build discipline, knowing that you're not going to be motivated over time, it creates a much more meaningful, purpose, joyful life. And I wish the same thing for everybody. I hate to, say these type of things, but sometimes it's got to come. Real change has to come through a wake-up call, right? Whether it's, the loss of a family member, an emergency doctor visit, a very poor blood report, wife steps out on you, kind of taps into my space there a little bit. And my goal here with the show is to give people not just the information, but, the inspiration that your life improves. I grew up in a somewhat of an overweight, family. I remember buying my jeans in the Husky department of JCPenney's as a teenager. And I didn't like the way that made me feel. And, finding the gym, finding Gold's Gym, being surrounded by big bodybuilders and meatheads as a young kid, and having them take me under my wing changed my life. I think fitness is a gateway to a lasting, meaningful, superhuman life. And I think you probably would agree with a lot of that as well.
100%, brother. I think you're sending a great message. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Stan. I appreciate you, brother. Your incredible wealth of knowledge. Sometimes I'm blown away at your ability to retain as much information. What's the hack there to be able to retain as much information as you do?
I'm glad you asked that, because I wanted to summarize on what you just concluded with there. To help people develop their passion, write things down. Write your goal down. Chris Bell talked one time about he wrote it on the mirror in his bathroom. There you go. I mentioned earlier I have the spreadsheet with the days of the month and things. I have a yellow pad of paper that I work off of for my to-do list. If I put my to-do list items into my Outlook calendar on my phone, every time I turn my phone off, it's like it's gone, right? I have a yellow pad of paper and I write things down on it. I did a rant once where I talked about the fact that sometimes I'll identify those things as whether or not it's something I even have any control over, right? Knowing the difference between those things which you have any ability to impact, or whether it's out of your control. They call it serenity prayer, right? I'll try and prioritize the things on the list, but they're on there. Dr. Matthew Walker, a sleep specialist, talked about using it as a worry journal at night, offloading some of the stress onto it, and then setting it next to your bed so you can go to sleep, and then you'll know they'll be there in the morning. You don't have to sit there and, whether it's a to-do list of items that you don't want to forget. So I write all those things down, and that becomes really helpful. With respect to all of the things that we talked about today, I've had the opportunity to present over 200 seminars in 17 countries in all 50 states. And I created a slideshow, a presentation, where each of these topics is addressed and discussed in those seminars. And I memorialized it in my ebook as well, The Vertical Diet, which is all of the chapters discussing all the things we discussed today, along with all the references to the research that I commonly talk about, and the individuals that who I give credit for having brought that information to me. Not that it's some invention of theirs, but it's the path through which the individuals through which I get this information. That helps, and I think Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about that in his book 12 Rules for Life. That it helps to write out your thoughts on certain topics, so that you can articulate them, and so I do that a lot. I've got piles of scratchings where I try and formulate my position on a certain topic and bring into it the pros and cons and the opposition and the people I reference that agree with me. But the point is that oftentimes you have a hard time articulating things if you haven't sat down and really kind of thought about it. Even if you've watched other people talk about it, if you haven't put that into some sort of document that allows you to discuss all the nuances of a topic, it's kind of hard to present that to other people. And I've had a lot of practice with that. It started with creating the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation. And then, of course, as I presented it and then answered questions about it, I became more confident or refined the message, changed, updated as I went along. And so I'm really comfortable now. I've received thousands of questions from people all over the world. I've probably responded to over 100,000 DMs in the last 5 years. When people send me DMs, I try and respond. And I might copy and paste an article or a video that I saw that was relative to their question. I feel like I've heard it all. And I'm not out there trying to be right about it. I'm just trying to get them directed to where I think that there's a consensus amongst the domain-specific professionals in that particular arena.
Bringing things to a close here, we usually have the same question that we ask every single episode. I asked you last time what it meant to live a superhuman life. Take that and kind of tweak it here a little bit. In your opinion, Stan, what value and importance does being physically fit and strong as a man play in living a superhuman life?
Yeah, boy, I tell you, I think we touched on it with the stress for success. It's the foundation of everything. I said in that video, my Rhinos rant, pay yourself first. You'll be better with your marriage. You'll be better, a better example for your children. You'll be better in your business. Aside from performance, obviously you'll be better physically there. But pay yourself first. Get the sleep, regular exercise, a healthy diet. Everything improves as a result. That's the foundation upon which all those other things sit and get better as a result.
Amen, brother. Guys, you asked for it. We brought him back. Stan, share this one just like you did the last one. We want to see this one blow up the internet. I'm sure we will. Stan, it's been an absolute honor, man. Get out there, enjoy your pickleball on this Friday afternoon, man, out there in the beautiful American Samoa. But I appreciate you, brother, for everything you bring to our world and our fitness community, man. God bless you, man.
Thank you for having me, brother. All my best.
All right, bud. Bye.